Today, we're diving into a story that's all about what happens when you decide to step off that well-worn path. It's a look at how just one single journey, all by yourself, can completely change everything.
You ever get that feeling like you're just on autopilot, living out a life that somebody else wrote for you? I think we've all been there. And that feeling, right there, is exactly where our story kicks off today.
So let's meet Sarah. She's 19 years old, and she's basically at this huge crossroads. She's looking at her future, and all she sees is this perfectly safe, perfectly planned out life that just doesn't feel like it belongs to her. Yeah, I mean, from the outside looking in, everything seemed perfect. She'd just wrapped up her first year of college, had great friends and family close by. The path forward was crystal clear. But on the inside, oh, it was a totally different story. She was feeling so restless, she wasn't even sure about her degree, and she had this creeping fear that she was just drifting into a future she didn't actually want. And then this feeling hits her. You know that gut feeling? It was this little voice inside that said, hey, staying put, that's the real risk here. So she did something that absolutely terrified her. She booked a one-way ticket to Thailand. And this wasn't her running away from something. No, it was about her running towards something, even if she had no idea what that something was.
And, as you can imagine, not everyone got it. Her parents were worried sick. Her friends were like, are you crazy? This is so impulsive. Some people even called it flat out irresponsible. But she just took her savings, packed one backpack, and got on that plane anyway. And believe me, she was way more scared than she was confident.
So this is where the adventure begins, right? Well, it wasn't exactly the kind of highlight reel you'd see on Instagram. The reality of landing in a brand new country all by herself, it was intense. It was jarring. And honestly, it was completely overwhelming.
Just try to picture it. Bangkok was, well, it was a shock to the system. It was louder, hotter, and way more chaotic than anything she'd ever known. The streets were just packed with people, and not knowing the language made even buying a bottle of water feel like a huge challenge. Everything was just intimidating. It wasn't just a different place, it felt like a different planet.
And this is where things got really tough. At night, lying in this little hostel bed, the loneliness was just crushing. All those doubts she heard from people back home, they suddenly became her own thoughts, echoing in her head. What have I done? Were they right? Was this just a huge, stupid mistake?
But then, right when she was at her lowest, something small happened that changed everything. She met a couple of other solo travelers, and when they started talking, she realized they felt the exact same way. They had the same fears, the same stories, and it was like a light bulb went off. She wasn't failing. She was just adjusting. This was all part of the process.
And that one little realization, it was a game changer. The whole tide started to turn. So this next part of her story, it's all about how she started to find her footing, building herself back up, one tiny victory at a time.
Look, her confidence didn't just magically reappear overnight. It wasn't some big, heroic movie moment. It was built piece by piece through these small wins. First, she figured out how to navigate a new city without getting totally lost. Then she mastered the bus system. She even learned how to manage her money after, making a few mistakes at first. She picked up a few basic Thai phrases. Each little thing was like a piece of evidence, proving to herself, hey, I can actually do this. And all those little victories, they all started adding up, leading to this one really profound moment. It happened during a quiet sunset in Chiang Mai. She was just sitting by herself on a hill, looking out over the city.
And it just hit her. She realized she had handled everything, all of it, by herself. The confusion, the fear, the mistakes, even the homesickness. She got through it all. And for the very first time, it felt like she wasn't just following some pre-written script. She was the one in charge, navigating not just a new country, but her own life.
You see, what she found up on that hill wasn't just plain old confidence. It was something deeper. It was resilience. That inner toughness, the ability to get knocked down and get right back up. It's that psychological muscle that lets you face a challenge and just recover. She now knew, deep in her bones, that she could handle whatever came her way.
So after 3 months, she finally went home. And the really interesting thing is that the biggest reward from her trip wasn't about the cool temples she saw or the beaches she visited. It was all about the person she had become.
Because from the outside, nothing had really changed that much. She came back to the same town, was going to the same university, but on the inside, oh man, internally, everything had shifted. Her whole perspective on life, her sense of who she was, it was all different.
And that internal shift led to some very real, very tangible changes in her life. She went back to school and switched her major to something she was actually passionate about. She became so much more independent. Little things that used to stress her out, they just didn't bother her anymore. And maybe the biggest change of all, that fear of the unknown, the thing that used to hold her back, it was gone.
And this really gets to the heart of her whole story, The trip itself didn't magically give her all the answers.
It gave her something so much better. It gave her resilience. It gave her the strength to find her own answers and the confidence to face an uncertain future. It gave her the tools to start building a life that was truly her own.
I mean, Sarah's story is just such a perfect example of that old saying, right? That growth rarely happens inside our comfort zones. Real, meaningful change, the kind that truly shapes who we are, it almost always happens when we take that scary step into the unknown.
So, that leaves us with one last question to think about. What journey is waiting for you? Now, it doesn't have to be a one-way ticket to the other side of the world. Maybe your journey is starting that new project, or finally having that tough conversation, or learning that skill you've been putting off. The real question is, what's your version of that scary first step? And what kind of strength, what kind of resilience is waiting for you on the other side?